if you are asking, here's a petition. Please go sign our petition. As if Adam Silver in the NBA and the WNBA and Kathy Engelberg is going to listen to a very small minority of fans. And that's what it is. They're asking the old WNBA fandom to step up here. After months of stalling in negotiations, the WNBA team owners continue to ignore player demands and jeopardize the future of women's professional basketball.
The WNBA stands at a critical crossroads. After months of deadlocked contract negotiations, team owners and players remain at an impasse, threatening the very future of women's professional basketball. The Players Association has taken the unusual step of launching a public petition, urging fans to pressure ownership into accepting their terms. But here's the twist. When a union resorts to grassroots campaigns after rejecting a salary package that multiplies compensation ninefold, something doesn't add up. This isn't strength. This is desperation wrapped in activism.
Like this, Mick Talks Hoops shared this on his Twitter. This is nuts. This statement is insane from the WNBA PA, claiming that people are tuning into this league for Alyssa Thomas, one of the most unlikable athletes I've ever covered, talked about, mused on, anything. There's nobody tuning in for.
The Players Association made a curious choice in their public messaging. They're positioning Alyssa Thomas as the face of this movement. Not Caitlin Clark, the phenomenon who delivered 3 million viewers and transformed the league's television ratings overnight. Not Sabrina Ionescu or Ija Wilson, stars with mainstream appeal and universal respect. Instead, they chose one of the league's most polarizing figures to lead their charge. This decision reveals a fundamental disconnect between union leadership and the reality driving the WNBA's unprecedented growth. The media rights deal funding these historic salary increases didn't materialize because of divisive personalities. It happened despite them. Clark brought the audience. Clark changed the game, and that's the uncomfortable truth nobody at the Players Association wants to acknowledge.
Sophie Cunningham stance on the CBA negotiations signal a red flag. Her comments sure as hell do. There's a chance that a potential lockout will become an option if spring arrives with no CBA in place. Sophie Cunningham seems to believe this is a likely outcome, which is conveyed during the January 15th episode of the Show Me Something podcast. Quote, our CBA is so dumb right now that it's headed towards a lockout, Cunningham said. When her host, Wes Wilson, asked whether there had been any progress,
Sophie Cunningham just said the quiet part out loud. During her January 15th appearance on the Show Me Something podcast, the Phoenix Mercury guard didn't mince words. Our CBA is so dumb right now that it's headed towards a lockout. When asked about negotiation progress, her answer was blunt, no. But here's what makes her frustration so revealing. This isn't anger directed at ownership. This is a player recognizing her own union's strategic failure. Cunningham is intelligent enough to examine the actual numbers being offered. Maximum salaries exceeding $1 million, comprehensive revenue, sharing, charter flights, eliminating grueling commercial travel schedules, a compensation package 9 times larger than the previous structure. And yet, the Players Association has characterized this historic offer as insulting. That's not negotiation. That's theater.
Honestly, nothing. We get weekly emails from the PA side, and it's just so dumb. That's great. You guys know I'm a huge Sophie Cunningham fan. But you're getting offered a lot of money. But that revenue sharing thing is not going to happen. And the NBA, Adam Silver and the NBA and those owners, by the way, they're trying to buy back that 16% that got sold off to people outside of the basketball world, either NBA or WNBA.
Rebecca Lobo, a legend in women's basketball whose credibility is beyond question, has issued a stark warning. When she publicly cautions that players are hemorrhaging public support, this isn't criticism, it's a lifeline. She's attempting to pull them back from the precipice before they obliterate goodwill that took nearly 3 decades to cultivate. But the most alarming development isn't what players are saying. It's what they're ignoring. The rhetoric from union representatives isn't softening as public skepticism grows, it's intensifying. They're not reading the room. They're not acknowledging that fans can calculate basic economics. And the mathematics of this situation devastatingly undermine the union's position.
It's been a little troublesome. She's talking about the players. When a deal is presented that's over $1 million max salary and revenue share, it's a slap in the face. Like, just use different words. I'm worried the players might be getting to the point where they're losing support from the public. And I think that's been a big part of it all along. It's over. They've lost the public. They've lost the public that's not blindly paying attention. If they're just blindly not paying attention, or they're supporting the players because there's alternative reasons why they're supporting players, there's agenda that's got nothing to do with the...
Let's examine what revenue sharing actually means in professional basketball. NBA players receive approximately 50% of basketball-related income, a model that functions because the league generates $10 billion annually. The WNBA is demanding 30% of gross revenue, while the league has historically operated in the red for 40 of its 47 years of existence. This isn't a negotiating position. This is economic fantasy. What makes this particularly troubling is that the players' union possesses the same financial data as everyone else. They know the league's profitability history. They understand the recent financial gains are entirely attributable to a media rights deal driven by one player's transformative impact. So when they present revenue sharing as a reasonable demand despite these realities, they're not negotiating in good faith. They're making a political statement with other people's livelihoods.
You heard that come out of my mouth, and I meant it, and that is what it is. Like, yeah, I mean, you got people running their mouth out there about billionaires can afford cars, so they ought to just prop our league up. Boy, you're running your mouth a lot about other people's money. That's not yours. But you're just fine with somebody giving it to you. It does not work out. The math does not work out. Wow. Headed towards a lockout. Sophie just come out and said we're headed towards a lockout at this.
Watch the body language. That's not someone projecting confidence in their position. That's someone who understands the numbers don't support the narrative, but has chosen commitment to ideology over mathematics. And this narrative is systematically destroying productive negotiations. There exists a segment of WNBA fandom that believes the league deserves indefinite subsidization regardless of financial performance. They genuinely advocate that billionaire owners should absorb losses perpetually because women's basketball merits existence as a cultural statement. While that sentiment might be emotionally gratifying, it fundamentally misunderstands how professional sports operate. The NBA didn't support the WNBA for 27 years out of charitable obligation. They made a calculated investment, wagering that eventually the product would attract an audience large enough for sustainability. Last season, that investment finally began yielding returns. And now, precisely when the league could transition to authentic financial independence, the players' union is threatening to detonate it all.
It's a bullet into the league. And look, this league's only got a certain, and I guess this is what I think the players do know this, and I think they're being spiteful and they're angry about this. They know, really and truly, there's about 12 likable players in the whole damn league. I said it out loud. About 12 or 15 players that don't rub everybody the wrong damn way.
Tall, likable players. That's the brutally honest assessment of how many athletes in this league don't actively alienate casual fans. Before dismissing this as harsh, consider what unfolded last season. Fans labeled the dark side by players, rookie hazing that escalated to physical assault, veterans refusing to acknowledge the player who rescued their careers, media professionals attacked simply for doing their jobs. Throughout it all, a consistent message emerged from a vocal player contingent. We don't want your fandom unless you worship us unconditionally. Sophie Cunningham represents one of those 12. She's professional, engaging, and genuinely appears to enjoy playing basketball for a living. If the league featured 40 players with her approach to media and fan relations, these CBA negotiations would be unfolding in an entirely different atmosphere. but they don't. And that's precisely why the leverage the union believes it possesses is illusory.
I'm just being real. And Sophie's one of the likable players. They'd have a lot more fans if players conducted themselves in the manner that she does. You know, professional and blah, blah, blah. And there's players that do, and they're likable. But there's so few players where it feels like it's about basketball. That's a problem in a professional basketball league.
Let's walk through the actual consequences if this escalates to a lockout, because the outcomes aren't what the players' union anticipates. First, the media rights deal remains intact. Those contracts are signed, the money committed. What vanishes is the urgency to finalize expansion plans and capitalize on last season's momentum. The league sacrifices an entire year of growth at precisely the moment casual fans are deciding whether to become permanent supporters. Second, the public narrative undergoes complete transformation. Currently, significant goodwill exists toward WNBA players, built on decades of being underpaid relative to their abilities. The instant they reject an offer multiplying salaries ninefold with revenue sharing included, that narrative evaporates. Suddenly, they're not underpaid athletes fighting for fairness, the professionals who declined millions because they demanded more of someone else's money. Third, and this is what the union appears to be entirely disregarding, the NBA has options. They could sell their 16% stake to outside investors with less patience for losses. They could reduce operational support and force the WNBA to function as an independent business. They could even, if pushed sufficiently, walk away entirely and let the league discover what true market value means. Now let's address the uncomfortable truth everyone's avoiding. A segment of the fan base supports the players' union's position not because the economics make sense, but because they view this as a broader cultural statement about representation. While that might constitute a valid cultural argument, it's a catastrophic business argument. Professional sports leagues don't survive on subsidies and good intentions. They survive by building a product that enough people want to consume to generate sustainable revenue. The WNBA finally discovered that formula last season, one player bringing millions of new fans, creating sufficient interest to justify a legitimate media rights deal. That's the foundation you build upon. That's the momentum you capitalize on. Instead, the players' union is exploiting this moment to make demands that would be appropriate if the league had been profitable for decades. They're negotiating as if they possess NBA player leverage when the financial reality is completely different. And they're doing it with rhetoric actively alienating the new fans who just arrived. Rebecca Lobo's warning about eroding public support isn't hypothetical, it's already manifesting in social media sentiment, comment sections, and the way casual fans who were excited about the WNBA last season are now rolling their eyes at these negotiations. This is a deal that acknowledges the league's growth while respecting its financial reality. But it's insufficient because for a vocal segment of the union, this was never about securing a fair deal. It was about making a statement. It was about forcing the NBA to treat the WNBA as an equal partner, regardless of massive revenue disparity. It was about validation more than compensation. That's not a negotiating strategy, that's an ego trip. And it's going to cost everyone involved. Sophie Cunningham sees it, Rebecca Lobo sees it. Anyone capable of reading a balance sheet sees it. The question is whether enough players recognize this before it actually goes to lockout, because once that happens, the damage isn't easily repaired. Momentum lost is extraordinarily difficult to recapture. Fans alienated don't always return. And the NBA's patience, while substantial, isn't infinite. The WNBA experienced a breakthrough season, genuine growth, authentic interest, real financial progress. This CBA negotiation should be a celebration of that achievement, with both sides working collaboratively to build on the foundation just established. Instead, it's devolving into a test of how much goodwill one union can destroy while claiming to fight for its members' interests. So where does this end? Either union leadership recognizes reality and accepts the deal on the table, or they push this to lockout and discover exactly how little leverage they actually possess. Either way, the league loses a year of growth it cannot afford to sacrifice. Players lose public support they desperately need. And the fans who just discovered this league last season get reminded why they ignored it for the previous 27 years. That's the real cost of this negotiation, not the money, not the percentages. The cost is credibility. And once you lose that, no collective bargaining agreement in the world can retrieve it.